Hey everybody, welcome back to our series on Marian apparitions. Today we're going to travel to France and go back to the year 1871 to talk about an apparition known as Our Lady of Pontmain, or also Our Lady of Hope. This apparition took place just a few months after the start of the Franco-Prussian War, where the French Emperor and the Prussian King basically went to war over who would have more influence in European politics. Going into the war, France was pretty sure of itself and pretty confident in its own powers, but basically from the start, the Prussians dominated them. The Prussian army marched through France, and within a few months, they had laid siege to Paris and were also spreading throughout the countryside, trying to take over as much territory as they could. On January 17, 1871, the Prussian army was marching toward the city of Laval, and right in their way was the tiny village of Pontmain. Only about 500 people lived there, and a lot of their men were off at war, so the village was really weak. They knew they had no chance against the Prussians, and they were terrified. The priest of the local parish was encouraging the people to pray, but most of the town was too scared and despondent to do even that. But that evening, as it was getting dark, a 12-year-old boy named Eugene Barbadet was helping his dad in the barn. He stopped to look outside, and then he saw among the stars an image of a beautiful woman in a blue gown and wearing a golden crown. Right away, Eugene called for the rest of his family to come see this. His parents couldn't see the woman, but his little brother Joseph could, and when more adults started to gather around to see what the commotion was about, none of them could see the image either. So they actually called the nun who worked at the school and had her bring over two little girls, 9 and 11 years old. And as soon as they got there, these little girls instantly saw Our Lady in the sky and described her exactly as Eugene and Joseph had. The whole crowd began to pray. Our Lady never spoke, but she began to unroll this banner, and as the kids watched, words started appearing and moving around on this banner that said, "But pray, my children, God will hear you in time." The crowd began to sing a hymn to Mary, and she actually started to smile and laugh and sing along. This whole event lasted for a couple of hours, and during this time the crowd kept praying and singing, and as they watched, Mary would change. Often she was smiling, sometimes she would hold a crucifix and look really sad. But Joseph later remembered that the thing that most stuck with him was how often she would reach out her hand toward the crowd, and how tenderly and lovingly she would gaze at them. That exact same night, the Prussian army received an order to stop marching and turned around before they reached Laval or Pontmain. The order made no sense, and even at the time nobody was sure exactly why it was being sent. But the Prussian army obeyed, and within 11 days the war had ended. I hope it makes sense then why this apparition has also taken on the name Our Lady of Hope. Mary appeared to the village when it was at its lowest point, when things seemed bleakest, when it was on the very brink of destruction, and when there seemed to be no hope. But she reminded them that God was still with them, that He still loved them, He still cared for them, and He was still hearing their prayers. She assured them that their prayers would have an effect, and she gave the crowd a very clear and visible proof of how much joy she feels and God feels when we turn to them in prayer. Our Lady of Hope, pray for us.